Very good morning, my dear students. So today, as I am discussing about the introduction to computer system, under introduction to computer system storage section, I am going to discuss. Storage has a different part and different sub parts. So at this those videos, what I am discussing about the different parts and sub parts of the storage sections. So storage, what we say that the area where we can save the work, isn't it, where we can save the data. That means in this particular section today at this moment I am going to describe about data capture, storage and retrieval. That means the process what we find that we are taking the input. Okay, we are first taking the input or the capture of the data. We capture the data. After we capture the data, then what we find that we are storing the data and files in a database for the further use. So this is the particular storage of the database for the further use. What we do, we have seen it originally. We are making the data, we are taking the data in such a way, in such a form that where we are getting the excess of the work. Okay, so whatever the particular information that we are taking, whatever the particular information we find that we are using, each and every information what we have, we are first taking the data. Like from the keyboard we are taking the data, from the mouse we are taking the data, isn't it? So different sections we do find it that from each of the different sections what we do, we are taking the data and we are working with the data. So all this particular thing that we find it that we do have different patterns of what the data that we are using. Okay, different types of data that we are using. So each and every pattern of data what we find that we need to retrieve the data and we have to use it for the future purpose or the further use. So as we are using it for the further use, those the particular structure we can find, those the particular strategy that we can see that in each of the section we can have a performance and we are performing a different pattern of actions. So data capture, how we are capturing the data, we find it that when we are taking the data, when we are finding the data, so each of this particular data what they are processed for the purpose of what, purpose of gathering the data from the different sources and in a digital form. So in a digital form, in a digital section what we find it that when we are working with this, when we are finding that we are sending the data and we are working with this particular data, we find it that those the data what we are taking and what we are capturing, we find it this is a very important phase that we are wanting this particular thing to be worked out, isn't it? So as we find it that particular thing to be worked out, we are seeing, suppose you have a keyboard. Okay, you have a barcode reader. So barcode reader, those the keyboard, barcode reader, what we do with those things, suppose you go to the different pattern of shops. Okay, different type of shops are there. So when we are going to the different type of shops, what we find it that every shop outlets we have what, the keyboard we have, they are using the computer. So when they are using the computer in this particular arena, they are also using the barcode. Okay, so barcode means what, in a commodity what you find, the commodity that you will going to purchase, that particular commodity you are having a what, barcode is there, isn't it? So in this barcode what happened that you have to scan particular thing and you have to find out that when the particular thing has been created, when it has been done, etc, etc. So what is the price of it, all this particular thing. So we find it that we are having all this particular structure, we are making all these structures and when we are having all this structure, we find that each of this particular structure what we find it that we are working on it, we are making the structure in a particular scenario based on which what we find that we are taking the first information with the help of a barcode reader. So as we are taking the barcode reader help and we are sensing it, we are finding that all these different type of activities regarding to that particular product is in front of you, so they will going to make a bill for you. So similarly we can find a social media, there are different type of remote sensors are there. So all those remote particular sensors, what we find that each and every remote sensors that we are using, what we are using a satellite system. Okay, so heterogeneously we find that there are the different data sources are there, and when we are having a different pattern of data sources, those the data sources what we make, we capture the data source and we make the task easier. Okay. So data storage, what do you mean by a data storage? First, data capturing. Now we need to store the data. Storing the data means as we get the data, each and every data what nowadays we have seen it, we find it that all those data what are there, we need to capture the data. Okay, for what purpose? For the purpose of processing it. So as we are processing the data, we find it that those the data nowadays is being used in a high rate, that means very high rate we are using those data, and therefore we are making the storage. So those the storage what we are making, we are having those and we are challenging the task. Different pattern of task are there, isn't it? Different type of task are there. That means cost of the data. What is the cost of particular item? How we will going to store it? How we will going to help it and make it simplify? So those the particular thing, those the particular structure what we find that in a market, when we are seeing in the market that we find people are purchasing in a huge amount. Okay, so what you will do, what we will do, how we will going to make the thing, how we will make the thing in an organized phase. So numerously what we can find it that as you are taking the record of the data, as we are making the record of the data what we are doing, we are keeping the data in a different area. Okay, so there are different counters are there. In those different counters what you do, you go and you give all the products that you have purchased. That means those the thing what they are doing the scanning of it, as soon as it will be going to link with what, link with the main memory. Okay, that means main CPU through which we can find it that we can send the information and we can get the total information. Okay, so this is what we are making it, we are activating it, the deactivating part of the computer. What we do, we are activating it, and after activating it we are getting the hardware and software for this particular help, and we are setting up the data, and we are getting the different pattern of services that are there. So all those different pattern of services what we find that are there, so each and every pattern of the services what we are using, each and every pattern of the structures that we are using, so all those structures what we find that we are storing the data. Okay, we are making the data to be stored in this particular area. Next what we find it that in each of this particular section, that data renewal. Okay, revival of this particular data, that means we want to renew that particular thing, whatever you have, it is true what the data we are fetching from your main computer, that means server what we say generally, from that server the data storage where the data are main data are being stored, we are getting those particular thing, and we are finding it those the sections what we have, those the part what we have, we are involving those data, we are making those data in a particular manner. Okay, so as we are making the data in a particular manner, we find it that as we are doing the particular structures, those the structures what we have, those the part what we find that we are retrieving those, we are taking those data and we are working with those data. So this is what we can find that how we can do the processing of this data and we can work with this data. Now comes the question, all the data we cannot store for a long duration of time. So what we find, sometime we can find some data by fault we have deleted it. Okay, so if you delete those data, how we can recover those data? Okay, how we can recover those data? So recovering of this data, the storing, what we find that there are the different pattern of malfunctionings are there, different type of malfunctionings are there. So on this particular malfunctioning, what we see that we are working on this particular scenario, that particular part, that where we are having our data storage and how we can get the data from the different sections. Okay, so that is very important. That means we can find there are a lot of hackers are there, lot of structures are there. So all those structures, what do we have, what do we find it? So each and every structures that we can find that the data what we have, if we have deleted any pattern of data, if we have deleted any part of the data in from any storage section, there is a chance that we will going to bring it. Okay, so where it is stored, that means it is not stored in one particular area, it is stored in a different area in a different sections. Okay, so those the thing what we find, those the part that we find that each of this particular section that we are working with, each of this particular sections that we are finding with, that we are accidentally have done some of the mistake, like deletion. If I said, so you have accidentally deleted some of the data. So accidentally when you have deleted some of the data, that means you need to get it. Okay, so from where you will get the data, from where you will find the data that you can work on. So there is a main server, from the main server you can find out the data and you can work with those data. Okay, so this is how you can find it, this is how we can see that we do have some community sections, we do have some community purpose based on which we are going to work with those data, and we are giving some security measures. Okay, those the security measures that we find, those the security sections that we find. So each and every security sections that we are maintaining, each and every security sections that we are doing, we are providing the data, and we find it that there are some limitation of this particular arena. Okay, so those the limitation of the particular arena we have, like what we find, we have some password. Okay, so all those password what is there, all those password what we find, that each and every password we are having, why? For to protect the data, so that data cannot be lost or data cannot be changed, okay, permanently. So this is the particular structure that we find, this is the particular part that we find, that when we are having all these particular sessions, when we are making all these particular sessions, we are going to work on it. Okay, we are finding that this is the sessions that we can work on this particular data. Now when we are talking about the data, that means this particular section we cannot leave. What is that? That is a computer memory. Okay, so in a computer memory, in this particular part of computer memory, what we find it that in this particular computer memory, we have just like a human brain, what we are doing, we are storing the data, we are storing the instructions, all these things. So computer memory, what we find it, that is a space in a computer where the data can be processed. We can process the data, we can store the data, isn't it? So collection of the different cells, lot of cells are there, uniquely we can find that there are the physical address we can give it. Okay, so most of the components what we find, there is a byte addressable and cell at this particular thing what we find it. Suppose this is one example has been given. So this is the cell size what we take, the how the memory size is. If you compute 64k words, kilobit words, that means 64 into 1024, that means 65536 memory in the location address, the location address from 0 to 65535. So this is what we can find, that we can have all this particular pattern of data. So all this particular pattern of data, we are having those things. So memory, when we talk about a storage, when we talk about a data section, we cannot leave this particular memory. Okay, so in this memory, one memory that is very important that I need to discuss today, that is a cache memory. What is a cache memory? You can see this particular structure. This particular structure is your cache memory. So cache memory is a very high speed semiconductor memory, okay, which can have a speed up CPU, and it act as a buffering between what? The CPU and the main memory. That means this is the CPU and this is your main memory. So it is a buffering. That means it will take the data, it will store here, and again then it will send, again it will store and send. So this way the thing will be frequently to be done. Okay, so this is what we can find, that how we can organize it and how we can work on it. So see here, there are some advantage of the cache memory that I have make it out, and I have give you the points. The cache memory is very faster than any of the main memory. Number one. Number two, what we can find, it can consume less time as compared to the main memory. If you are taking the main memory compared to it, it will going to take a less time. Next, what we can find it, the storage of the program can be executed within a short period of time. Okay, within the short period of time we can find this particular thing can be happens. Next, what we can find, the storage is what? Storage data is for the temporary purpose. Those are the main basic four important points that I have given for the advantage purpose. Okay, and two disadvantage what we can find, that cache memory has a limited capacity. That means what? The capacity of other memory, here we can find this particular memory capacity is limited. Okay, not too much, not very high. Next, what we can find, expensive. Obviously the cache memory is very much expensive memory system. Okay, so as this memory is a very much expensive memory system, in this particular memory system what we find, that if you when we are installing it, for that you have to pay a money for it. That means excess amount of money you have to pay for it. So it is an expensive matter, but though of all we all require this particular memory, we all keep this particular cache memory, and we all work with this particular cache memory. Okay, so this is how we can find, this is how we can see, when we are working on this particular cache memory, we are calling and we are making those data structures, and we are working with those particular data in the storage section. Okay, so this is what the particular one storage section where we are using the cache memory also. So we will go to the different other sections of it, but before of that, you see here that I have given some of the input devices like keyboard. You all know there is a keyboard. Keyboard has a different keys on it, and the keyboards are working on it. Then mouse is there, which is an interface between the graphical interface. Okay, as it graphical interface, it can select the folder, text, etc. All these things. Scanner is there. Scanner you used to scan the documents and file. OMR is there, that is optical mark reader is there. Okay, which used to send the documents and data. OCR is there, optical character reader is there, that is used for the input. Sorry. MICR is there, magnetic ink character reader is there. What we find it, this particular magnetic ink character reader will going to take the bank checks. You can see the bank checks. Then microphone is there, webcam is there, graphical tablets is there, isn't it? Trackball is there, barcode reader is there, gamepad is there, joysticks are there. So many things that we can find, that there are the different patterns of what? They are the different patterns of an input devices. Okay, so those are the different type of input devices, and we are working on that different pattern of the input devices what we have. So thank you students. Today I am ending this session here. Thank you all.